Well, feelfulness is the new science of generating states of being. Now, feelfulness, feel a feeling by choice, employs methods where a feeling or emotion in English language is experienced in anticipation by using unique linguistic elements such as evocators, movers, descriptors, which I like to arrange in triplicates because they are very powerful in triplicates. And I will explain why. And these triplicates are going to evoke an experience for you. Now, feelfulness takes the concept of mindfulness to greater heights, greater depths, greater heights, because it teaches you how to feel a feeling by choice. A good feeling by choice, yeah? And how by feeling a feeling by choice, you cultivate a positive psychological state, and you also get to develop new or modify existing personality traits. Develop new or modify existing personality traits. So who do you want to be? And all of this is made possible by the incredible power of neuroplasticity. Feelfulness, feel a feeling by choice. So Randy today wanted to talk about feelfulness because I'm still writing the book and I'm excited. I can't wait to finish. But this book just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Randy.
Did you want to talk about why you decided to write a book about it?
Well, why I decided to write the book? Well, the book has to be written. Feelfulness, I've been teaching feelfulness since 2011 with great results. And well, way before that, I've noticed that there's a lot of experts, I like to call them big gurus. They all say they feel the feeling because feeling the feeling is the secret. But none of them, not that I know, and not that any of my students have found either, none of them, they actually teach you how to feel the feeling. So thank you very much. Yeah, that's the secret. I mean, it's good to know secrets. I'm clicking here through things. All right. It's very good to know secrets, but how do we feel the feeling? So, and even in I don't want to limit this to hypnosis because it's not just hypnosis. This is to a lot of personal growth and emotional intelligence. Well, feelfulness, feel a feeling, the by choice is the top emotional intelligence skills. So you want to have that, especially nowadays when life is happening at a very rapid pace. Everything is moving fast, and we are overwhelmed. Are we not? Well, we are. A lot of people are overwhelmed. I'm still clicking through things here. And to have the capacity to feel a feeling by choice is so important nowadays. Because how many years ago we started to become aware of the difference between reacting and responding? Yeah? Which is very important, because through feelfulness you will learn how to differentiate between reacting and responding, and how to respond, how to have a delay in response and a quickness in, no, how to have a delay in reaction and a quickness in response, which usually we are quick to react and slow to respond. So fearfulness is going to teach you how to do the opposite. But in today's lifestyle, everything moves so fast that we find ourselves in a reactionary mode. And it's hard to shift out of reactionary mode because we're bombarded with a lot of information, with a lot of things to do. So then how do you shift out of reactionary mode into response mode? And then by the time your thought processes and your thought feeling processes go into, oh, I shouldn't react, I should respond, but how to respond and what's the appropriate response, and then you go about scanning at least 150 180 degrees of what's in front of you and what's the appropriate response while maintaining your integrity. Time passes and you might still be in reaction mode, and you don't want to be in reaction mode. I don't know if there are people, well, very few people, if they're in rural area, probably that they would not be stressed. But most people in the urban area, 99.9% of them encounter stress, daily pressure, deadlines, hurry up, get things done. So fearfulness is going to teach you how to feel a feeling by choice. I mean, how do you want to feel? Because the fact of the matter is that, I'm clicking through things here. The fact of the matter is that feeling comes first and thinking comes second. So here is where everybody talks about the importance of increasing self-awareness. Well, self-awareness, yes, you can never stop increasing self-awareness, because through increasing self-awareness, you'll be aware, you begin to become more aware of what you are feeling, how you are feeling inside, and then you're going to be able to manage, then choose your response, therefore feel a feeling by choice. Yeah, because sense, as in sensing, as in feeling, it's always before thought. It's just that's how it works. There is a natural order of things in the universe, in all of creation, and this is the order. Sense comes before thought. So my 5 steps for creating consciously are awareness, thought, attention, choice, and action. Yeah, so you're gonna be aware of something, you're gonna have a thought about what you're aware of, you're gonna place your attention on your thought, hopefully you want to place attention on your thought, then you're going to choose what you're going to do with that thought and how you're going to allocate attention to the thought that you have, that what you're going to do next, what's your action. So your action is going to be a quiet thinking kind of a decision, whether yes or no, you like or you don't like, criticize or not criticize, and before even engaging in physical action. So fearfulness is going to take care of all of these things like that. Yeah, and this is a tremendous skill, and it's very important. Randy?
When you decided to write the book, what was your what was sort of your ultimate goal in terms of what you would like people to get out of it?
Well, Randy, so many experts, so many leaders, people that are sought after, are telling you feel the feeling, because the feeling is the secret. But they don't teach you how to feel the feeling. And since 2011, I've been teaching people how to feel the feeling, right? And I wasn't quite aware of the value that I was providing back then. Up until up until somebody asked me, well, how are you going to call this? And I was like, well, it's a thought feeling practice because you practice, and but then that was in 2010. I was asked, how are you going to call this? And then I kept thinking about it. I said, that's a good question. So it took me a good year to find a good terminology for it, other than thought feeling practices, whether thought feeling practices are what's going to take you to feelfulness. But feelfulness is the term to attribute to this, because if mindfulness has you become aware of your thoughts and your emotions, and has you observe them and begin to accept for what they are, teaches you how to begin to shift into response mode away from reaction mode, which mindfulness is doing a tremendous job at that. Then if you feel a feeling by choice, that then should be feelfulness. Because mindfulness is over here in your mind, while feelfulness is over here in your body. So with feelfulness, I'm addressing the matters of your heart as well. Most of the matters of your heart. Because when people are not feeling good, their heart is broken. And when people are feeling happy, their heart is expanded. So what's the secret? Well, the secret is to feel happy all the time. But how do you feel happy all the time? Yeah. And there is a way to be in a state of flow, for example. There is a science of happiness that was developed by Martin Seligman. The state of flow was touched upon Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, right? And here are some of the chapters in my book. So I don't know if you can see them on the screen, but there's a lot of chapters, and this book keeps on growing, right? Is because
Did you want to talk about
it and it keeps on growing. It's not an easy book to write, not at all. And I gotten the first draft out, and me and you talked about it a while back, and I laugh at it now because I'm so excited to get it out. It's like get it like a little child, because I'm gonna give people something so valuable, but now let me take a step back and mention that with the book, a book is not going to teach you how to feel a feeling. At least it's going to get you on your way. And a lot of people that have practiced mindfulness and other shamanism or alchemy practices might be able to just use the book and just go ahead and feel the feeling by themselves, or at least the book is going to get you on your way, and at least it's going to take you that this is available. It is a new science, so to speak. It's been tested, and it's working, and then you get to try it on for yourself, because the proof is in the pudding, right? So go ahead and be as skeptic as you want. Good luck, because the proof is in the pudding, and But then of course there is training available for those who are interested to become trained in it. And the way I introduced feelfulness to thought feeling practices out there first, it was through my first books, the Creating Ease books. Creating Ease at, oh, this is a bit blurry now. The camera is on autofocus. Okay, there you go. The Creating Ease and Creating Ease at Creating Ease Alive and Creating Ease at workbooks that they published in 2015 and 2016. And people thought, and there was a way for me to introduce the thought feeling practices. Even the book says thought feeling practices, right? And that I didn't consider necessary at the time to say feelfulness, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, or if I was going to do anything more with it. But once this were published and people got a hold of it, I have 6 thought feeling practices in it. They're not guided meditation, they're not hypnosis, they're not affirmations, none of that. They're thought feeling practices, because through the practice I'm teaching you how to feel the feeling of. And a lot of people have gotten great results from it. And back then in 2015 and 2016, consciousness hasn't been evolved as greatly as it is now. And I've gotten good report on it. But now, when I teach it, some people just get it in 3 seconds. Well, oh, okay. Well, I have some people that I see on a weekly basis, and here's last week I'm explaining someone how to do it, and I'm guiding them through thought feeling practices, and then I quiz them the following week, and it's like, yeah, sure, I got it. And I said, okay, show me. So I had them walk through the theory of it, through the steps, and then sure enough, I asked them to expand, and sure enough, they get it. So I know it's possible. And it's quite amazing, Randy. It's quite amazing, and this has to come out. It has to come out. Yeah. And the number one reason that this has to come out, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, I'm not gonna sneeze. And the number one reason it has to come out is practitioners. Yeah. In the past couple of years, the world has gone crazy fast. People are overwhelmed, overstressed, anxiety has skyrocketed, depressive states are through the roof as well. People are needing help. Therapists cannot keep pace with that. There's too many people that need help. There's a lot of coaches that are helping with it. There's a lot of hypnosis is growing hypnotherapy is growing at a rapid pace. Hypnosis and hypnosis therapy. And all of these people helpers, including therapists, hypnotherapists, coaches, they will benefit greatly from learning how to feel a feeling by choice, because they need to. Yeah. How many people helpers are, what's the better terminology to use? What's the better terminology to use? They get overrun by this emotional contagion is the terminology. So it's very hard when you work with people going through difficulties, and they come to you to help them with their anxiety, depression, overwhelm, stress, and that heavy heart, it's hard to, you have to be empathetic. Yeah, because otherwise, how can you not be empathetic? Is there a therapy? Well, okay, I'm not going to get into details, but empathy is it's required for therapists and coaches and people helpers. Yeah, and most of them are. Most of them are. People don't become therapists because they don't care. So when you care about someone and you work with them on a daily basis, that's, you're gonna get all contagious, contaminated with their emotional heaviness. So what do you do to not contaminate yourself with that emotional heaviness, but still be empathetic and provide a space and the energy, a healing energy that is not found in words, and it's not just empathy, that is going to help your client shift, is going to you're going to achieve therapy through that. Yeah, and you're not going to be contaminated. So this is the number one reason this book needs to come out, because there are so many techniques, and I am seeing plenty colleagues that they either reduce the amount of people that they see, or or they seek other avenues for therapy, or they limit the type of therapy that they offer, right? So people need help, and us as therapists and hypnotherapists and coaches, this is the new science on how to help them and how to help them quick.
Well, you have that you are using Jungian archetypes in some of it, and I'm not sure a lot of people know who Carl Jung was, and I'm not sure they know what an archetype is. They do at some level, because it's a feature of almost every movie that comes out now. Since Star Wars, everything's got to be the hero's journey, and but how are you bringing those archetypes into all this?
Oh, those I love talking about these archetypes, and this archetypes is also going to take me, and also I'm going to help others shift into a multicultural approach to every client, especially here in the United States. It's not going to help a client that is bilingual. They're not going to be, their collective consciousness is not going to have the same amount of, the same combination of archetypal behavior and automatism than other people. And I grew up in Romania, and I'm very familiar with the Eastern European Black archetypal style, and the archetypal, if I can call it, conditioning, right? And it's very important to address someone according to their values, their beliefs, and their strengths. Now, the word archetype originates from Greek terminology, the word archetypos, which means first imprint. Yeah. So the universe as it is has imprints, first imprints, archetypes. And Plato, the Greek philosopher with the Platonic solids, sacred geometry, he introduced the world to archetypes through what he called forms. Now, forms are not necessarily objects, but Plato, by introducing, I have so many things I want to say, and I have a stampede of sentences again. I'm so passionate about this. So, Plato, by introducing the Platonic solids through form, he recognized two realities: the world that we live in, the physical world, the physical world where you can touch through your five senses, and the non-physical realm where the forms exist. So forms are not the same as objects, yeah? And he also recognized that there are pre-existing blueprints or templates that include characteristics like round, soft, hard, green, black, square, circle, and so on. Now, later on in psychology, Carl Jung, my favorite, according to Carl Jung, an archetype is an inherited pattern of thought derived from past experience that is going to condition a behavior within you. Yeah. So a lot of these archetypes, before we go into known archetypes, is very little talked about that this every culture creates its own specific cultural archetypes, and every person draws from this collective unconscious that they were brought up with. So these archetypes are there for them to think through, feel to, behave through, being conditioned by, make decisions, enjoy life, be happy, have values, motivation, strengths, and specifically motivations. Okay? So Carl Jung, there's many archetypes. Not all archetypes are yet to be defined. I know of, and I can provide, and I will provide, close to 300 archetypes. There might be too many for some, but it might be enjoyable to some others. So, but to give an example of collective unconscious archetype, we can think of birth, rebirth, and death. Yeah, power, unity, magic, the hero, the child, the animal, the wise man, the Mother Earth, Father Sky, good, evil. These are archetypes. So you can see how this exists as behavior, as experience, as physical reality, as thoughts, as feelings, as patterns of behavior, and definitely, most definitely, this influence, they exert a great amount of influence over people's experience of life, their decision, and their overall well-being and happiness.
Well, how do you use? How does it tie into feelfulness? The use for archetypes.
That's a good question. You're gonna have to read the book on that, because feelfulness comes with archetypes. You get to develop new archetype. You will construct new archetype by feeling the feeling you want to have. And this is not going to be linear. It's not going to be binary. This is going to be complex and dynamic. And here is why I'm introducing word triangles or mind triangles. So triangles have been introduced in psychology for a long time. Carl Jung might have introduced those triangles, but maybe other people before him. And triangles are a very important aspect of the psyche, because every archetype, every strength comes with two possible weaknesses, and every weakness comes with at least two possible strengths. So it's not binary, and choices are to be exerted right here. And which choice are you going to choose to exert, right? So in order for you to know what choice to exert, then you want to become aware of these archetypes. But before I'm going to go into this triangular archetype, I'm going to talk about the main four archetypes that Carl Jung introduced, and they sit at the base of analytical psychology. Yeah, Carl Jung. We love Carl Jung because Carl Jung, one of the very important things about Carl Jung, very few people know, is that he teaches us no one is better than another, and that the shadow is not a bad thing, right? What we want to know about Carl Jung, up until we get into all of the psychology and professional terminology, is that Carl Jung introduced us to the concept of balance, of opposing concept, and through opposition, and not necessarily conflict, but through opposition, we get to create balance. And balance and adaptive states is what we seek to achieve as a psychological state. But it's not as easy to do. So the four main archetypes that Carl Jung define are the persona. Let me see if I can find an image here. So, okay, here are the anima and animus. I split them in two because they're I need to present them talk about them differently, right? But they're one archetype. So let me see, is there, okay, these are images that are part of my book. Okay, just one more second. I must have redone that image where I had only 4 archetypes, because for me it's important to distinguish between anima and animus, because it's a very big thing going on lately. So we have the persona right here. You can see my mouse, yeah, right, the persona. And the persona's opposite, which is going to create a balance, is the shadow. Yeah, is the shadow. Can you see my mouse here? Yeah, you can see my mouse. Is the shadow. Yeah. And anima and animus is a archetype in its own, which it's already a balanced archetype. Anima representing the feminine aspect of the male psyche, or it's otherwise it's one half of a whole, or otherwise anima is known as the soul. Yeah? And animus is the masculine aspect of the female psyche, which is the one half of the other whole, balancing the anima, and otherwise known animus as the sacredness, which I can wait to to talk about the soul and the sacred aspect in this fearfulness, because it's very important. And individuation is the process, is the quest to wholeness. Yeah, this is what personal growth and leadership and career, evolving through career and growing and making more money and becoming successful is about. Individuation, personal growth, development, becoming the best version you can be. There's many different terminologies for it. And individuation is the quest for wholeness, to become conscious as a human being, not more or less than others. So next time we hear Carl Jung, I want you to hear not more, not less than others as a human being. Yeah? So, but if your behavior is of a psychopath or a sociopath or a narcissist or a criticizer, there's a lot in your shadow that you have to address and work with. And if your behavior goes against the law, the shadow needs to be addressed. And your persona is infatuated with the masks that are there to hide the pain that sits within deep in your soul, right? So in my work, in the work of Feelfulness, I address your sweet little heart, the sweetness, deepest portion of your soul, and that which you came here to be, to provide a service, to provide the value to the evolution of humanity, to be of good use to your fellow humans, not to be used by fellow humans, to be of good use, right? So a lot of people, which I really don't like, a lot of people talk about the shadow poorly. They don't understand what a shadow is. Yeah, it's not bad. The shadow is not bad, and don't beat up on a shadow. And the ego, don't beat up on the ego, because ego is bad, and you come out of ego, you come out of shadow, you're gonna work on your shadow. And I would like to caution a lot of people to use the word ego and shadow a bit more selectively, yeah, because what the shadow is represents your weaknesses, your desires, your lust. You know, when you're lustful, that sits in your shadow. Your instincts, the desires of the flesh, your shortcomings, your reactionary mode other than your response mode, and definitely what you project onto others. No more projecting onto others. So because we have, through feelfulness, we're going to learn how to not only not project onto others, but we should and we will, and a lot of us are walking the walk, modeling and being an example to others. Unconsciously, they already do feelfulness. They already shift into that, generating that state of being that provides healing, balancing, healing energy to those around them, just by being themselves. And sometimes it's sufficient, but sometimes more is needed, right? So any questions so far, Randy?
One of the, not a question, but just an observation, was that this is the 20th year. I think yesterday was literally the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. Um, and that was when, we went in to get Saddam Hussein. Very, very controversial war. But there was an incident in that whole episode, it was like 6 months leading up to it. There was an incident that showed better than anything I'd ever seen what the shadow means. And the shadow is very Jungian. But Saddam Hussein had tried at one point to assassinate George W. Bush's father, George H.R. Bush, both former presidents. Saddam Hussein, there was a plot that Saddam Hussein had tried to kill Bush. I don't know if it was when he was his president or what, but the first President Bush, he tried to kill him. So when Bush Jr. got into office, I think a lot of people was concerned that he was going to go after Saddam Hussein for something or the other, and he did. And there was an interview, it was done one time, he said it one time, never repeated it, and I don't think he really meant to say it when he did, but somebody asked him, why of all troubled countries in our troubled world, why this? And what was it about Saddam Hussein that most worried, most upset him? And Bush said, George Bush Jr. said, he tried to kill my daddy. Now, what's the shadow in that? The shadow is, if you know George W. Bush's history, he had a very contemptuous relationship with his father, reportedly. I didn't know him, obviously. But George W. Bush Jr. Had a very controversial youth. Lots of drug use, lots of drinking at least. And that's nothing secret about that. He's been very honest and open about it. But there was the hint that there was trouble that there'd been trouble between his father and him. He wasn't going to be able to live up to the role that his father had. Well, Saddam Hussein in George W. Bush's shadow is George Bush unconsciously probably wanted his father out of his life because he couldn't live up to it. So when Saddam Hussein said he was going to kill his father, George Bush, in a Jungian perspective, could have projected onto him what was really inside of George Bush, the desire to want to get rid of his father. So that was unacceptable. And so George Bush had to kill that thought and that urge, and it was personified. You used the word projected. It was personified, and it is true, it is projected onto Saddam Hussein. That Saddam Hussein was George Bush's shadow that he had to kill because it was unacceptable to have the urge to kill his father, which he may have had. Anyway, it was the best example of having a shadow that I'd ever heard of up until that point. But anyway, having said all that, back to the book, is there a use of the archetypes that just everyday people like myself can use in your book?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That is, you're gonna be able to, especially you, Randy, as a therapist, you're going to be able to use a lot of different archetypes, and these archetypes are going to help you. Now, when it comes to the shadow is a part of the unconscious that it's composed of repressed ideas and weaknesses and desires and lusts, like you gave such a good example, and it's quite an evocative example. And see, right there, as you presented this story, that story in itself is it's archetypal and it's evocative. It's already triggers emotions in a lot of people, yeah. And but you as a therapist, by getting more insights about the shadow, which I'm not going to bore you with a lot of pages on the shadow. I'm just going to give you the gist of the shadow, which you're going to say, oh, I can do this for myself. And then when you're there with a client, and you can say, oh, I can help my client address this part of their shadow, because in that's most of that's what therapy is about, working with the shadow, trying to balance the shadow and having the shadow integrate into the persona, right? But what a little bit that the persona is something that people don't know a whole lot about it, and they understand it differently than what is meant to be, because words over time, over centuries and millennia of years, words get the meaning of the words get distorted. And from persona, now we have personality. And through personality, we understand that personality is who we are. Yeah, this is what people understand. The meaning of the usage of the word is how the word is used now, right? But the persona is actually how we present ourselves to the world. And we don't always present ourselves to the world as per our personality, because it's not feasible, it's not appropriate, right? And another point that I want to stress on the persona is that the word persona derives from the Latin word that literally means mask, right? So you hear a lot of the people in personal growth and a lot of people that have gone through personal growth and therapy and spirituality and what have you, talk about having a mask on. And my people say, well, I don't have a mask on, I'm not hiding anything. No, it's not about hiding. A mask, since we have all kinds of Halloween parties and we put masks on and all kinds of the terminology, the way the word mask is used nowadays is very different than what the mask is, because the mask the mask in its literal word in Latin doesn't mean a literal physical mask. It's more of a social mask that we wear among different groups. Like right here, me and you are wearing a particular mask, a particular persona right now in this podcast, because we are conveying something, right? So I'm not going to carry my persona of the mother, and you're not going to carry your persona of the father right here, right now, right? And persona uses this social mask that we go in a social situation, and it's there to shield the ego from negative images. Yeah, because we don't want to present ourselves negatively, which is good. That's a good thing. Don't present yourself negatively. Yeah. So that's the persona. You want to add something to it?
No, except, well, maybe one of the things, and this, I mean, this is, I'm sure it's part of the book too, but one of the things that is interesting about hypnosis is, at least the modern version of it, is so popular now, is that in the Jungian world, the shadow was this repressed urges and desires, and they were kind of dark. In fact, one of the big books about all this was a book by Debbie Ford 20, 30 years ago called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And she expanded on all that, and Deepak Chopra is big into, you know, our dark sides that we suppress and project onto others. So if somebody's acting rude to me, it's because I have the urge to be rude, but I've suppressed it. And I see this in the other person, and I have to suppress it in the other person because I'm suppressing it in me. But one of the things that I think hypnosis is interesting is that it sees the subconscious as a source of strength and safety and security, so that it doesn't, I mean, I don't think hypnosis denies that there may be suppressions, of course, as I understand it, but it would say that, for instance, in the George Bush example, it was to help George Bush's fragile little ego to stay above water and run for politics and run for the president and win twice. It helped him by believing that he was a good, and he is, I mean, I'm not debating this, but that he would never have those kind of urges whatsoever. So the subconscious was sort of like saying to him, yes, other people want to hurt others, but you're a better person than that. We're just going to erase that out of your mind, like you don't even, like your feelings about your father are irrelevant. It kept him safe. And that's one of the interesting things about hypnosis, because the old school thought before, you know, modern hypnosis was that the subconscious is this cauldron of conflict. And so anyway, just thought that was interesting. Is there anything else that you'd want to mention about the book, though, that you think people should be aware of as you continue it? I mean, what they should look forward to?
Yes, people should look forward to the Feelfulness book. So some of the chapters that I'm so far, I keep adding chapters. And I need to get this book to a good chapter. But I think I have a good amount of chapter here. So the book is I'm going to touch upon the definition of feelfulness and definition of state of being. I'm going to talk about the conscious and subconscious, and all of the book is written in a very simple language, language that people can understand and relate to. I'm also going to touch on the self, on the I self and the me self, and there's a lot about the self that's going to, well, the whole book it's about, you take the book and you apply it to the self being also an archetype that through the process of individuation we arrive to the self, right? So, but then also William James touched up on the self very nicely, on the conscious and the unconscious, and the levels between the I self and the me self, as well as Carl Jung. So then I'm going to talk about the power of will, and the title of the chapters is not always a represent. Okay, I'm not going to say this. The title of the chapters are good. So then I'm going to touch upon feelings and emotions, and the neurotransmitters' roles in feelings and emotions. But something I want to mention is that in the English language, feeling is understood as an emotion, and in most other languages, there are two separate terminologies for an emotion and for a feeling. So it comes a bit confusing to, not confusing, but it lacks terminology. The English language lacks terminology. The usage of the word feelings being received as emotions, because it's not, right? I distinguish emotions as something that is rapid and quick, and for me feelings are larger and constructive, right? And of course feelings are also something you feel in your body, sensations and all that. So for me, feeling is not the same as an emotion, right? An emotion, a positive emotion, can grow into a feeling, and this is how the feelfulness premises is that I'm going to teach you how choose a positive emotion, and then to the process of evocation, we're going to construct a triangle to work with your archetypal construction, so you can shift into a positive feeling of to feel a feeling by choice. It's quite amazing. It's amazing if you ask me. Okay, so then we're going to talk about neurotransmitters role in feeling. We're going to talk about experiences. Why experiences are important, because they are, experiences create additional archetypes, and they leave imprints in our conscious and subconscious and collective unconscious. Going to talk about emotional contagion. Emotional contagion, it's big topic. Most people should be aware of it. And then emoting therapeutically. Yeah, emoting therapeutically is very important, like I discussed earlier. Emoting therapeutically to your clients. You can emote therapeutically to your family. So you don't have to be a therapist or a coach to learn feelfulness. Then we're going to talk about thought value levels. There are thought value levels, and then there is thought management. Thought management. I'm going to make it very simple. It's not even 2 pages. Thought management, right? Basic human needs, beliefs and reframing, yeah, alchemy and psychology, psychological types, functions and processes, Carl Jungian, archetypes, the sacred, shamanism and psychology, symbolism, alchemical hypnosis, Ericksonian hypnotherapy, generating states for therapists, generating states in shamanism, the consciousness of shamanism, states of being. Enough on the states of being, right? Then generating states of being. Feelfulness, generating states of being. And it's going to come with influential language, evocators, mover, description, descriptors, war triangles, the higher mind. How the higher mind has a lot to do with how we observe, notice, pay attention, focus, concentrate. And I have some incredibly simple techniques that I'm going to teach you on how to direct your attention, and so there is a length and a distance to where your attention goes throughout the day. So when your life flows where your attention goes, right? So if you want your life to flow better, then you have to have your attention in a proper place. So through these techniques, it's a few exercises of the higher mind, only by 5 exercises. If you practice these 5 exercises I'm going to give you, higher mind and observational, attention, focus, concentration, 5 exercises, you're going to achieve mindfulness like that. 5 exercises. Yeah. So then, of course, the higher mind goes hand in hand with attention, focus, and observation, and then this detached observation through the layers of thought. It's such a significant a skill to acquire, because this is going to take you, well, first you're going to understand why that is important, that first of all that it exists, and then it is important, and that is important for feelfulness. And then I'm going to have to talk about Cartman's drama triangle, because that is a ugliest archetype that was somehow got constructed as is a thought feeling archetype that seems to control people's behavior, and there is a way to get out of it, but it's not a simple way to get out of it. Working with a shadow and working with a shadow and with a persona to balance that might be a bit more easier than to get out of the drama triangle. And I'm not talking about drama triangle as other people. We all have a drama an archetype of drama in our consciousness, in our thoughts, in our feelings, and our behavior. We all have it. So, and the moment we try to get out of it, the moment we try to fix the victim, we end up the perpetrator. And the moment we try to address the perpetrator, we end up being the rescuer, and so on. It goes in a circle. So there is a way, and through Feelfulness, you will learn how to get out of it. Now, this is a process. This by default is going to address and work with your shadow by default, and it's very significant work. And I've been teaching this since 2011, and the results we're getting, they're quite amazing. And then we're going to talk about shifting from binary states of being to complex states of being. Because, let me see if I can click on something here to show something. Just a quick second. Right here. Here's my Feelfulness website. So when I talk about binary states of being, here I have on the website, I have a slideshow where I added some of the binary and complex states of being that are so desired right now. A lot of people are looking for confidence. So there's so many states of being. I'm going to have a significant list, and going to a good enough depth into describing how to shift from a binary state of being into a dynamic, complex state of being. Because it's easy to do. A lot of us are doing it already, but not necessarily consciously by choice right away when you need it most. Right? Again, step away from that reactionary mode. And it's hard to stay away from reactionary mode because of the amygdala. And the amygdala is, I'm definitely going to talk about the amygdala in my book. Yeah? And let me click on something else here. And that's that. And what else? Let me see if I have this. What is the neurotransmitters? All right. Oh, here might be the thing I was looking for. Yeah, here's the quadrant. Here's Carl Jung's quadrant. The four archetypes. So, and then, so after diving this good enough on the binary states and on a complex dynamic states of being, you're going to begin to understand the importance of generating states and how do you quicker generate the states of being through the dynamic, complex states of being. And then, of course, then what naturally follows after that is the authentic state of happiness. New Science by Martin Seligman father of the positive psychology, the developing human potential, and then the flow state as brought to us by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, because eventually we all want to experience the flow state, and Feelfulness is going to teach you how to, well, at first you're going to practice and intentionally shift into it, and after a while it's going to become a habit, because you're going to create an archetype of your flow state, because everybody's flow state is different according to their self. This big quadrant over here, to the stage to which they are in balancing the shadow with their persona, this too, and in how far along are they in the process of individuation, and in addition to that, everybody has their own processes. Now, this is quite an image to work on. I've been inspired. Matthew Wozniak, PhD, inspired. This image is inspired by his work, and we know that an image is worth 1,000 words. So this image is in a process of. I'm in a process of redoing this image because I don't particularly like this separation over here. But then Canva, it's a great tool for me to create these images. So I have to spend a little bit more time into redoing this image. That this image has a lot to do with William James. Definition, explanation of the I self and the me self, and the values of the subjective me and the objective me, the conscious and unconscious thought, and the unconscious, the meta delusions of the unconscious, again archetypes, and then the delusions that we have, the delusion of the lack of recognition of conscious thought. So we think we think we have plenty of recognition of conscious thought, but there is a delusion of the lack that we actually have. So here's where Carl Jung work into the process of individuation, to balancing the working through the shadow, to balance the shadow with the persona, with the whole of anima animus into the process of your individuation, is going to help tremendously with that. So this is not a scientific book, although some science is presented. This is an easy to read book, and I'm making it easy to read and to absorb. I'm providing a lot of information there, and plenty of reference. Almost. Well, yeah, this is going to be the initial manual of Feelfulness. How was that, Randy?
Very good. And I see that we're almost at an hour and a half. I appreciate you sharing the information about your book, and you'll have to let us know when it gets closer to being published and all that stuff, so we can have our eyes open for it.
All right, definitely, most absolutely, definitely, and you are correct. This has been a long podcast, and I actually have an appointment right now coming up. So thank you for watching. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, everybody, for watching, your input, your questions, and I look forward to your questions. And Right here on my website, you are able to find some more. Up until the book is out, you are going to find some more information right here on my website. Yeah, a little slower. You have some information there about feelfulness as overall feelfulness. Yeah. And then I was able to work on this page, which I like this page. I just designed this page myself on feelfulness training. So all of this is based on the science of neuroplasticity and talking a little bit about the journey and how feelfulness training is going to go about, which is all very flexible and tailored to the participants, because we are Ericksonian graduates and we ought to tailor, yeah, and utilize people's strengths, and providing a little bit on the secret to mastery, more on the complex dynamic states of being, the three main processes and steps that are going to take you to achieve feelfulness, a little bit on the states of being and mind triangles, a little bit about me, and you can book a free discovery call when you are called to do so. All right? All right, so thank you, and we'll see you next time. Is the self in the context of emotion and intelligence? The self is a big topic, and a very important topic that is. The self is probably one of the most important topic that we need to be familiar with. Why? Because the self is that which has difficulties throughout life. So the self is a dynamic construct that changes over time, and the self is perceived as mental or cognitive construct, and also embodies in our physical experiences and action and changes in different situations. And oftentimes, people ask themselves, or at least they should ask, who am I? So, who are you? Who are you? Who am I? Who's Randy? And even though the self is often thought as a single and unified entity, according to William James, which is the father of functional psychology, the self is actually composed of different aspects or dimensions, and he distinguished multiple dimensions of the self in a context of consciousness within two levels of hierarchy. There is the I self and there is the me self. The I self as subjective, which is the existence and the process of knowing, and the me self, which is the object, represents the subjective phenomenology at a higher level and the objective phenomenology at a lower level. And then when it comes to the me self, the observation and accumulation of information of the I self creates three types of knowledge for the me self. So there has to be an I self before there is a me self. And I self accumulates knowledge and information. And this creates a me self at three different layers: material self, social self, and spiritual self. And material self includes the body and the possessions. Social self comes closest to self-esteem, including all characteristics recognized by others. The spiritual self is made of evaluation regarding the self. Evaluation regarding the self. our perceived abilities, attitudes, interests, values, beliefs, opinion, motivation, traits, etc. So when it comes to this evaluation, we're going further. The evaluation also, they come in three different areas, according to William James, the father of functional psychology: the real self, ideal self, and dreaded self. And the difficulties that we have most in life is the dreaded self, because the dreaded self is that part of the self which hasn't been successful yet and is perceived as being unsuccessful or of having bad habits, otherwise known as the ego. And this dreaded self, otherwise known as the ego, is also perceived as a failure to meet social expectations and commonly known as being self-centered and sometimes narcissistic. So the purpose of the self and understanding these different layers of the self is understanding that the self develops in stages by uniting all of these identities, these layers of the self, and living up to social expectations over the factual world problems become much more complex, while these developmental stages bring complex personal, moral, and cultural demands. So the self is a complex construct that comes with I self, the me self as subjective, me self as objective, conscious thoughts, unconscious thoughts, delusions, meta delusions, phenomenology at least three different layers, and so on. So emotional intelligence comes in here very handy and very necessary to help us understand parts of the self and help us unite these different parts of the self with more ease. But what's happening lately, there's a good amount of individuals, even professionally in the mental health field, that they mistaken emotional intelligence teaching for professing psychology. So teaching emotional intelligence and professing psychology are two very different things. And we're going to have Randy talk about the different types of therapists to understand what their school of thought and what lies behind their certification and licensure and their short or long list of ethics and so on. Randy?
I'm off. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was on. Well, there are approximately 250 schools of therapy. And what in the world is somebody supposed to do with that? There are ways to pick a therapist. A person can pick a therapist according to their type of therapy that they do. The most popular ones are CBT, for cognitive behavioral therapy, and nowadays a hot new one is dialectical behavior therapy, which is a fancy word for a different type of therapy. But there are many others. The type of therapist that does these can be anybody that's like. The most important thing is not how many letters are behind somebody's name. I saw a posting today on Facebook by somebody who's, I think it's a legitimate therapist, she's an LCSW, She had 10 letters after her name. It was about 4 letters more than what were in her name. And I knew what a few of those designations. I knew what LCSW is and a CCM, but I didn't know what the other letters were. So what is important is basically two things. One is, are they licensed? If you're going to a therapist, are they licensed? Number one. And number two, is your relationship with them, does it feel right? So going to a therapist is to go to somebody, if you or somebody else, if you're struggling with emotional or mental struggles or issues. Somebody can go to a hypnotherapist for other issues. Maybe I want to learn how to improve my emotional intelligence. Anybody can teach that. That's a skill that's learned. That's not therapy. That's not a type of therapy. And anybody can, and in fact, anybody can do these other schools of therapy. It's just being very careful about who's monitored, who's licensed. Hypnotherapists are not licensed. They're not regulated that way. Licensed means that there is the state monitors the profession. Is that a big deal? I mean, it is. It's a very important thing. But in my state, Louisiana, hairdressers are licensed. So it doesn't mean that somebody's a genius if they're licensed. Even though hairdressers can be geniuses, I don't mean to imply that they're not all, but it doesn't mean that if a person's license just means that there's an oversight by a governing board. That's all that it means. It doesn't legitimize or delegitimize anything. I'm gonna get myself in hot water with hairdressers now, but anyway. So the main thing with hypnotherapy is to make sure that the therapist is certified. And there are several national groups that do certification for hypnotherapists. Some are legit, some aren't. That takes a little more digging. But I have known several hypnotists here and there. And they're trained, they go to a weekend workshop and they get trained, and they call themselves hypnotherapists. And there are some programs that will certify you in hypnotherapy with the weekend training where the price includes lunch. So just being certified doesn't cut it. If somebody's very interested in it, they should look into who is certified and research who certifies them and research that organization. Karma's certified nationally, I'm certified nationally, but there are lots of people that aren't. And so, but the other thing I'll say, then I'll stop talking, is, for instance, the letters behind somebody's name. If it's an ND or a DO or an NP or a what's the other nurse practitioner? I believe there's another designation for nurse practitioner, which is blocking right this moment. But there are, I think it's, I'm just blocking it. Anyway, those are all medical designations. Those are people who prescribe medicine. PhD is somebody who's gotten a doctorate in psychology. They go to school longer than somebody like me. They're usually smarter than somebody like me. These ones I know are. They're very intelligent people. They do a lot of research, and they spend a lot of time getting their degree and doing post-degree research and so on and so forth. That doesn't make them a better therapist. It just means that they're more educated. Plain and simple. That's all it means. They've gotten more educated. And they've got a bigger student loan probably. So an LCSW is a licensed clinical social worker. That's the highest level a social worker could be. An LPC is the newest one. That's a licensed professional professional counselor. What's the difference? There's not, I mean, it's splitting hairs, but an LPC, their school of thought, was based years ago in education. They tend to be, philosophically speaking, more educationally oriented. That's not true of everyone, and it's changed a lot since those days, but that's sort of their basis. Social work is more focused on social services, and a social work, a licensed clinical social worker is going to probably be more focused on different types of therapy and schools of therapy. That's what they're taught. But I'll tell you, and then there's LPCs, and then there's a whole bunch of others. There's a licensed addictions counselors. There's certified DBT therapists, certified cognitive behavioral therapists, on and on. Just do the research on the internet. It's simple, very simple to do. The important thing is this person certified nationally and or licensed, and do they have a reputation? Is it something do you feel comfortable, you as a client feel comfortable hiring them? Do you feel like they can help you? I will give you an example of somebody I would not use. I called somebody up, and it was a hypnotherapist, for instance, and I said, I just want to just know where your training's got, and they say, oh, I, I, I did a lot of my own self training, and these schools of hypnotherapy, they're all a scam. So I did a lot of my self training. But come on in. We'll talk about Let me just tell you what my problem is real quick, so you can know. Well, no, come on in, and we'll talk about it. I wouldn't go to somebody like that. I would want to make sure they knew. If they said to me instead, yes, here's where I trained. Here's my website. Here's where you can see my credentials. Here's where you can see who certified me. Let's talk for 10 minutes, no cost. And you give me a very short version of what's going on with you, and then we'll set the first appointment. That's somebody I'll probably see. It doesn't mean that they'd be right for me, but that's probably who I would see. And there was one other point I was going to make was, what Karma was saying in terms of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is an idea, it's a theory, and it's a skill that's being taught. It's a theory that eventually developed into some skills, listening skills, self-regulation skills, identifying emotion skills. It's a skill thing. It's not therapy. Anybody can do it. The books about emotional intelligence are written for the general public. So it's not some kind of special therapy. It's something they want anybody to do it. They think anybody should have it. So somebody can practice emotional therapy. That's emotional intelligence therapy, but that's a little iffy. But yeah, emotional intelligence is something that is available for anybody, including the general public. So anyway, I hope that clarifies a little bit of it.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Yes, that clarifies a little bit on a topic. I had a conversation with a bunch of my colleagues, and I was told that someone was accused of professing psychology just by teaching emotional intelligence. And I'm not sure if that is to be taken as a compliment or as something else. So when it comes to the reason older people might mistake emotional intelligence teaching for psychology, psychotherapy, There are several reasons. One of them would be lack of familiarity of what emotional intelligence is, overlapping concepts, limited exposure to emotional intelligence, language and terminology, preconceived notion, and most definitely limited awareness of evolving fields. So life has been happening so fast, at an accelerated rate for the past, at least for the past 20, 30 years. So much knowledge has entered the planet that we don't have time to keep up with all of that. So being educated over what emotional intelligence is necessary nowadays only for the sole purpose of experiencing life at such a accelerated rate. On the other hand, someone that works in a mental health field or just a health field, but more so someone that's employed in a mental health field, I would assume and I would preconceive that they would be familiar with what emotional intelligence is. But apparently not everybody is, which is okay. That's why we have this podcast, me and Randy, to educate on emotional intelligence skills, and all, as much as we get to do it publicly about emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is a concept and a field of study that has gained prominence relatively recently. Meyer and Salovey, they published it at the beginning 1990, 1990. Well, in 1990 in Romania, the field of psychology just started to take to begin to exist. Emotional intelligence in 1990 over here in the United States started to take off. So of course, there will be older individuals that might not be familiar with some of the terms and specificity when it comes to emotional intelligence. And there are overlapping concepts and language when it comes to emotional intelligence and psychology, and some of them, they share some common area of focus, such as understanding human behavior, understanding your triggers, understanding your emotions, and understanding interpersonal relationships. But emotional intelligence teaching and training and skills is not the same as psychotherapy, right? And this overlap can leads to the confusion, especially if an older person has a background of familiarity with traditional psychology teachings. So I would assume that in continuing education, at least over here in the United States, some will emphasize some emotional intelligence concepts. Another, when it comes to that overlapping concepts, there is language and terminology that is used in emotional intelligence teaching, such as self-awareness, empathy, emotional regulation, which may resemble psychological concepts, which might lead to the perception that emotional intelligence is a subset or branch of psychology. Which is not, right? It's just similar terminology and an overlap of common language and terminology, and what we do with that language and terminology. Another good reason for mistakenly make false accusation would be a limited exposure to emotional intelligence. Because emotional intelligence may not have been widely discussed or emphasized during someone's formative years many years ago. If someone grew up before 1990s, emotional intelligence wasn't, emotional intelligence started to take off in the United States that I'm aware of in 1990s. In Romania, emotional intelligence, it's probably, when did it enter? It's hard to say, but Romania started developing psychology as a field in 1990, and psychology as a field was well developed in the United States in 1990. So it helps us understand why would an older person would misconstrued emotional intelligence teaching for psychotherapy. And preconceived notion is always a troublemaker because that's when we have misunderstanding because of the preconceived notions. Older individual may have the preconceived notions about what constitutes psychology and may assume that any teaching related to emotion and behavior fall under the domain of psychology. And that might have been so many years ago, but with the emergence of emotional intelligence, with the emergence of NLP, with the emotion of specific language that helps us understand emotions and empathy and self-awareness, and that helps us better understand who we are, what we do, why we do, beliefs and values and habits, that those preconceived notions are not helping. And last but not least is the limited awareness of evolving fields. If we look at the medical doctors, when was it? Some doctors were talking about in 2020 that the medical field research doubles so quickly that every 17th day, and this was a few years ago, every 17th day it would double in quantity, research, information, knowledge. It is impossible to keep track with all of that. But we can keep track with the concepts of what's available. We don't necessarily have to be experts with all that it is available, because making false accusation, it's not good. And knowledge and fields of study, they evolve over time, and it can be challenging for some individuals to keep up with the latest developing. Well, it's challenging with any individual lately. That's the amount of information that we are bombarded with. It's hard to keep track of. But when we conceptualize something, it makes it much easier to compartmentalize and conceptualize things. Emotional intelligence as a distinct field may not have been on other people's radar, or may have emerged after their educational years. And that could say a lot about them keeping up with what's evolving and the behavioral field. Because not everybody, emotional intelligence evolving as a field and teaching us how to acquire skills to okay, I'm not going to go that route. It's quite a gift. It's quite a gift to humanity, to everybody. Well, it's a gift to humanity, but has become a requirement in the business world long enough ago. When did I wrote my first book in 2013? I started writing my books, and emotional intelligence was a requirement. Yeah, that was 10 years ago. Was a requirement at that time already, and not everybody that needs to understand their behavior, not everybody that needs to learn how to manage their emotions and develop empathy and compassion and building leadership skills and building team needs to have psychotherapy. But we all need emotional intelligence teachings and skills and knowledge about the concept because it helps us go through life with more ease, and we can certainly most definitely have more ease. We could have that at any time and all the time because we are bombarded with the acceleration uh, of life and information that we are faced with. Randy?
Uh, yes, that's exactly right. Emotional intelligence became very popular too because there was a book written about it, number one, and the it made headlines because the author, I can't remember, he's a psychologist, he theorized that emotional intelligence was more important than IQ, to our regular intelligence.
Yeah, that's this
And
Peter Salovey.
that made a
That's
lot.
Mayer and Salovey. Yeah.
That was major headlines. It was a big deal, and that kind of brought emotional intelligence to the forefront because in our culture, at least in this country, our culture, being intelligent is considered very high. It puts one in a very high social status, usually, not everyone, but typically. It's because, our society rewards and, it doesn't, it takes 10 minutes to be on the radio, turn the radio on, and hear somebody saying, well, we're going to interview somebody from Harvard now, and here's a Harvard law professor, that kind of thing. So when emotional intelligence came out, they said, well, this is more important than being mentally intelligent. This is more important. Made headlines, and there's some. I don't know. Carmen's the expert on it, but what little I know about it is that it does help people have a more improved life, and it helps in places like work where these days in our work environment, it's more important than being the smartest person in the room. I grew up in I'm very old, and I grew up in the Vietnam War era, and in this country. And those of our vast audience here who remember those days remember that the people that got us into Vietnam were considered the most intelligent people in the country, some of the most. One of them was the head of Ford Motor Company, and they were there was a book written about this whole era. It's called The Best and the Brightest, and that describes it perfectly. The best and the brightest. They were the smartest people in the country, and they got us into Vietnam. So intelligence. In my generation, my older boomer generation, we used to be proud to be boomers. Now it's kind of a badge of, now it's dishonor. But anyway, the us boomers tend to, generally speaking, tend to be wary of this. Oh, the smarter somebody is, the better. It's nice to be smart. I wish I was smart, but emotional intelligence is something anybody can learn. It has no basis education or intellectual ability. It's something anybody can learn. And skills and hypnotherapy can enhance that because it can help people practice those skills in a very effective way. 1 or 2 sessions. You could make an appointment with Carmen and for 2 or 3 sessions and say, "Can you teach me some emotional intelligence skills?" And you would leave having a much better ability to use those skills.
Yes, you are correct.
So yes, and just one other thing is
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to clarify, or just to emphasize, is that emotional intelligence is not psychotherapy, no more than improving self-esteem is psychotherapy. Emotional intelligence is a set of skills available to anybody. It has nothing to do with psychotherapy. So yes.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Thank you for enlightening us. And you are not old, if you ask me. What do I click on?
Well, I'll have to start asking you a lot.
All right. No, you're not old whatsoever. Okay, so what emotional intelligence, it's an absolute necessity when it comes to relationship. And someone just made a comment that emotional intelligence is important for relationship. Yes, it is, and it's highly important for relationship. And what are relationship? Well, relationship, it's a big topic of conversation, and we can definitely have a lot of podcasts on that. But some of the topics that emotional intelligence teaches us are self-awareness. And you don't have to do psychotherapy to become self-aware. Emotional regulation, which there's plenty of strategies and techniques for managing and regulating emotions for you to make informed decision and foster positive relationship. And the interesting thing is that many years ago, having a high IQ was valued over high EQ, emotional intelligence, but a lot of the high IQ in the work area, a lot of those people were not nice people. They were rude and demeaning and condescending to other people, and that's not good in an organization. It takes the whole team down. So there was a need to have these people focus on regulating their emotion as well, and also focusing on understanding the role of their self-awareness and the impact they have over the impact that their behavior and their communication style has over other people. Other skills that emotional intelligence goes over, it's empathy and social awareness. Empathy is and social awareness are better understood as being able to connect with others, put yourself in other shoes, and don't be so judgmental, and try to understand things from their perspective, which is not always very easy to do, but with a proper levels of emotional intelligence, that becomes easier to do. One of the most important thing you will ever learn from emotional intelligence is communication and active listening. Oftentimes during communication, when people talk, there's a conversation between two people, you might not, okay, how do I say this? Oftentimes people are waiting to make their statement to say what they're about to say, as opposed to listening to what the other people is saying. And effective communication and active listening skill, it's very, very important for building trust, fostering collaboration, resolving conflicts, and of course, enhancing relationships. And building resilience also is very, very important to build and develop resilience to navigate all the challenges and all the setbacks and all the stress in all of the roles we have in life. How many layers and levels of the self did I present earlier? Quite an enough number. But when we take that and go into the parts theory, that's going to get even more complex, right? So it's very important to develop this resilience. And we don't need to have psychotherapy to develop resilience. Some people do, some people don't. The decision making, it's so important. Making decision out of emotion at an emotionally aroused moment, it's not recommended. I always caution people to refrain from making a life-altering decision during difficult times. Why? Because it's because it's very important. Because the decision you make when you are going through an emotionally aroused situation, a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, or a couple of days, the decision you make at that time is going to be a very different decision should you have experienced different set of emotions. So emotions impact us tremendously, and they affect what we do, how we perceive, how we feel, decisions that we make. And we make decisions, we make a lot of unconscious decisions that it's highly emotional intelligence for us to become aware of the decisions that we make consciously and unconsciously. And conflict resolution, just by building empathy and communication with active listening skills, there will be no conflict. It would be just communication, understanding that a difference of opinion is oftentimes welcome, and it can be a resource full of potential for growth, full of potential for expansion, and something that doesn't have to evolve into a conflict. But we are so, as human beings, we are so busy being in conflict with arguing with another, that is very wise to develop some emotional intelligence skills for your own benefit, because the more conflict you experience, the more unhappy you are, and life is not pleasant, and it's not enjoyable, unless conflict is something that you really look forward to and enjoy the conflict. We sometimes you enjoy it, not at someone else's expense. And if you enjoy conflict, by all means, there's lots of sports that you can go engage in and go ahead and enjoy your conflict release in a sports team. But to constantly be in conflict with other people, doesn't help you, doesn't help them. Having a difference of opinion, that will always provide an opportunity for growth and expansion as opposed to conflict. Reflection, self-reflection, it's very Self-reflection is very important for you becoming self-aware, for developing emotional intelligence skill. It's important for personal growth, for continuous learning, leadership development. And what I'm finding interesting lately, that leadership development is a terminology that is used a lot lately, and leadership development doesn't necessarily is not restricted to leadership in an organizational environment only. There are different types of leadership, and in family settings, we need leadership role. We need leadership, some sort of leadership role when we drive a car. We are leading something. Right now, me and Randy are in a leadership role when we are providing this podcast. So leadership encompasses, again, it's a terminology that encompasses a lot, and it's not limited only to being a leader and leading a team, although that's how it has a lot to do with that, but that's not all there is to it. And then growth mindset, embracing a growth mindset to foster ongoing development and overcome challenges again. So instead of having conflict, difference of opinion and challenges, and allowing these challenges to propel you to further grow, that's much more healthy. It's a healthier way to live life. And then authenticity. Authenticity is that which is going to help you understand the layers of self, become self-aware, and become more authentic with who you are, and being appropriately authentic in the environment that you're in at any given moment. Authenticity, again, is a very big word that oftentimes is misrepresented in a conversation. Like, I'm Romanian, for example, and some would expect me would understand me as being authentic only when I speak Romanian, or only when I follow authentic Romanian culture, traditions, food, clothing, things like that, which there is a national authenticity, there is cultural authenticity, traditional authenticity, but that's not what an individual authenticity is limited to. And the secret is that with all of the personal growth and with all of the therapies, how long ago was I in a weekend full of training at various different therapy modalities, because now there are so many different types of therapy with a therapist, that with every single technique and every single approach, all of them came down to the self. Why? Because if you're authentic, if you're emotional intelligence, if you're authentic, if you have the self, if you unite those layers of the self, and I'm not talking about parts. Well, we can do parts, and we can talk about parts later on. Then you become authentic, and then when you become authentic, it's easier to be vulnerable, because when you're authentic, integrity automatically comes with it. I don't see situations where you can as the self, as an authentic self, I do not see a situation where you would have an authentic self without integrity. For me, maybe other people can see it, but I do not. And once you step into this authenticity of yours, which takes a little bit of time to get back to it, because when we were children, we were just so authentic. Life was full of possibilities, and we wanted to do things, we wanted to learn things, we wanted to take things apart to see how they work, and then parents and teachers and a religious leader told us that that's not the way to do things. The way to do things is this way, my or the highway. This is the right and the wrong and the white and the black. And that's good up to a point, and it's very important. But after a while, taking all of this teaching in consideration, that there is a right and wrong, and there is duality, but polarity, there is a difference between duality and polarity, and embracing your authentic self with integrity and compassion and self-awareness and empathy. This is what we are striving for in life. This is where we're heading to. This is what all of that therapy. We go to therapy because something is not working right. Something bothers us. Something doesn't work well. So as with all of the therapy that we go through all the steps, eventually we have to arrive to the self without being selfish, because arriving to the self and arriving to the authenticity of the self doesn't mean that you're going to be selfish. Randy?
Yeah, we could have a whole pot on authenticity. It's one of the things I like. I like your idea of integrity and honesty. Those I understand those better than I do the concept of authenticity. And here's why: is that, and maybe I'm missing something somewhere, but some of the most psychopathic people in the world are authentic. There's a guy in a Romanian custody right now. Speaking of Romania, his name's Andrew Tate, very popular YouTuber, millions and millions and millions of followers. 99% of them are male. They're in their 20s. They're very, very lost people, in my opinion. No offense, but he espouse he's a psychopath, in my opinion. And I'm not diagnosing him. Psychopath's not a diagnosis anyway, but he just has he's been arrested now and charged with trafficking, and there's some court documents that have come out that shows he obviously was into sex trafficking with very young women. Very, very dislikable person. And if you can listen to about 5-10 minutes on him on YouTube, and he's just insane, but he's very popular. To me, he's very authentic. He's pure as he can be, in the sense that he is who he is. So I struggle with being authentic, because I just know a lot of psychopaths that are very authentic. So anyway, I know I'm missing the boat on it somewhere. I must be, but
You're
that's
not
what I struggle with.
you're not missing the boat, and you make a very good point, because to the same token, when talking to my Romanian friends, plenty of them assume that being authentic it's having the authenticity of the Romanian culture, traditions, clothing, values, and keeping that authenticity. And authenticity is authenticity is well, no, they're not authentic, because these people that are intentionally harming others, they have some authentic emotion, they have some authentic anger, they have some authentic derangement, but I don't see them as authentic self.
So would you say that Harvey Weinstein was not an authentic person?
That kind of a person would,
You know what I'm talking about?
yes, well, that's not how I see the authentic self. That person is a criminal.
'Cause I read a book about him,
Uh-huh.
and so it's very interesting. He seemed as authentic as hell to me. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He didn't have any kind of hidden agenda. I mean, he was who he was, and for 30 years in Hollywood, everyone knew who he was and did business with him, and it was all, all. In other words, he wasn't putting on a facade. He wasn't being fake. He wasn't.
Okay,
He
okay, let me interrupt that. Being authentic is not the opposite of fakeness. But someone like you describe, I don't care to reproduce their name because I don't care to honor them. Someone like that, it's obviously an ill person, and they have an overinflated sense of self. And the sense of self is the I self and the me self and self evaluation. Their self evaluation is out of it's derailed, and the when it in between the I self and the me self, there's a bit too much. It's an out of balance towards the object the phenomenology, experiencing the me self as an object to the material self, and ignoring the social self and the spiritual self. Because the spiritual self, the essence of who we are, it's less likely to go inflict our harm on others. And someone who's you mentioned the other guy, don't reproduce their name because I don't want to honor them by stating their name. When they go harm others and abuse others and oppress others, they are lacking something very essential from their self. I self, me self. The me self, material self, social self, spiritual self. Self-evaluation, we have real self, ideal self, dreaded self. So in order for the self to become authentic, all of this need to be united in simple terms. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation. And yes, these people might, I accept their shadow and embrace their shadow, but no, I do not see them as authentic. I see them as we shouldn't have. I see them as they need to be thrown in jail, and one of them was, and the other one is, what did you say? It was arrested, and don't pronounce their name again. I don't care to call their name again. They are severely lacking the understanding of the I self and the other parts of the self. But you have a gift, Randy. You have a gift to go to take this to this polarity, which is so valuable in this context, because something needs to be clarified. And if you wouldn't have taken this polarity, I wouldn't have made this clarification. And this is at least from my point of view, because that is a complete lack of emotional intelligence for someone to hurt somebody, to abuse them, to rape them and sex trafficking, and that is it's a zero emotional intelligence level, and on top of that, even being condescending and demeaning someone's value, that's a lower level of emotional intelligence. So in order to unite the self, you need to elevate your emotional intelligence level. So how's that?
Uh, yeah, that makes sense. And those were very extreme examples. I think all of us have been around people. I don't know, the medical field that I've been involved in for most of my professional life. There's just a lot of people who it's very um, dog eat dog, for lack of a better term. And I don't know if it's a lack of emotional intelligence. The people seem authentic. Now, these are not extremes like I was talking about. These are just regular people, but they do. There's a lot of, and I'm way exaggerating, but I've been around. I've worked with medical people who are bullies. Uh, just can be very difficult. And when people say, I I want to be more authentic, I think sometimes of those people. I think, if I asked this, I worked for a nurse once who was just a monster, and I don't mean, I mean just a very difficult person to work with. She eventually was fired because she was stealing from the company that I worked for, the hospital. But before that happened, she made life miserable for a bunch of us. And if I asked her, or if somebody said, "Do you feel like you're living an authentic life?" I think she'd say, "Oh, 100%. You better believe it. I'm full of life." So it's a weird concept in me. I can point the finger and say, "Oh, she's not authentic." That's obvious. But if somebody asked her, I know she would say, "Oh, I'm the most authentic person in the whole city of Baton Rouge." And so, it's just a concept. I'm not sure I understand. That's pretty clear. That's very obvious, and that's very authentic.
Yes, it is. That's an authentic thought. But let me bring an image over here on the screen. Hopefully, you can see it too. If not, if you don't see the image, Randy, maybe you can turn your tab into the Facebook where this is streaming. And if we look at the the conscious experiences of the self, at least 35% of the self and I self and me self, it is unconscious. It contains delusions, and it contains meta delusions and delusions of lack of recognitions of conscious thoughts. So these people, again, they may have an authentic emotion and an authentic need to dominate and an authentic need to be put on a pedestal, and an authentic narcissistic inclination or authentic psychopathic inclination, authentic sociopathic inclination, yeah, but not the authentic self. If we look at functional psychology as taught by William James, father of functional psychology, and then looking at the process of individuation as per Carl Jung, the father of psychoanalytical psychology. Within the conscious experience of the I self, we have the me self as subjective, and then we have the me self as objective. Me self as subjective at a higher level, and me self objective as a lower level. And in this image, you can see the me self subjective at higher level in this gray area, where the me self objective phenomenology in the lower level in the white area. And these two higher level and the lower level of the me self experience has at least 3 different layers. And if we are looking at the visual experience, only just taking the visual experience because it's easy to explain, within the visual experience, the me self at the higher level and the me self at the lower levels goes like this in 3 layers. At a subjective highest level of the me self, the experience will be I see a hand. I, as the me, I see a hand. It's more general. In the other level, it goes a bit more specific, into which it says, I see your hand. It becomes a bit more specific. The visual experience of seeing your hand is not just a hand, but it's your hand, so there's more precise. And when it gets to the objective me self phenomenology level, then it goes into I see my hand. So the me self is complex through all of the senses, the visual, olfactory, auditory, tactile, also imagination and abstract thoughts. But what's interesting at this level of conscious thoughts, I'm talking about just conscious thoughts right now, at this level of conscious thoughts, the pain and the emotions are experienced differently as an objective phenomenology. As a subjective phenomenology, most individuals are going to experience some of this visual, olfactory, auditory, tactile at these 3 levels. But as an objective phenomenology, pain and emotions are going to be experienced differently. So here's another good reason of why emotional intelligence is such an important and such a necessity nowadays. How did this go into your understanding of authenticity, the way I'm approaching authentic self?
That makes sense better. Yeah, it's used so much; it's kind of psychobabble by a lot of people, but that makes sense.
All right.
It's interesting. It's an interesting discussion. I don't. When I was doing therapy and as a hypnotist, I've never had anybody in therapy anyway come in and say, I want to pay you $100 an hour so I can be more authentic. I don't think I'm authentic enough. So it's kind of it's sort of a theory that the regular people probably, it's something for therapists to be aware of, and counselors, coaches, and hypnotherapists, and those kind of coaching kind of things, because, like you said, it's so important. But in terms of what people pay us to help them do, it's usually not to become more authentic.
Not in psychotherapy, because psychotherapy is pathology oriented. But hypnotherapy and at least that external hypnotherapy is not pathology oriented, it's solution oriented. So when you look for solution, tailoring, utilization strengths, we look at the client's strengths. what are their strengths, what are their needs, what are their strengths, and that's going to fall immediately into their authenticity. And are we all aware of what's authentic? Are when we are authentic, when we're not authentic? It takes acquiring a bunch of skills to know when you are in your authentic self. And oh, do I have some really cool skills to teach on that? But as the self is a being dynamic construct, so this authenticity becomes dynamic and appropriate to the circumstance at hand. And no, you're right. People are not gonna know. Well, I want to become more authentic. No, but you will hear people saying nowadays, I want to become the best person that I could be. I want to become valuable to society. I want to provide service to my fellow humans. Now, that is someone who wants to step into their authenticity. And why have they not stepped into? By now they have, but there's still some areas within the self where they have a lot of social expectations, whether it's from their job, whether it's from their religion, from their family. There's a bunch of expectations that they have not met, these other expectations that doesn't give them room to be their authentic self. And then it's also the misunderstanding that if they step into their authentic self, then they're not going to fulfill these social expectations, which is not so, because it's just a matter of reframing. So NLP helps with that, hypnotherapy helps with that, coaching helps with that, emotional intelligence helps with that. And again, we're going to go back to the great magic of hypnotherapy, which lies into the fact that with hypnosis, you get into the deeper layers of yourself. And you find out, you work with your subconscious and you take out those parts of the self which are not serving you, things that you don't like. But people like those two you mentioned, don't mention their name again, they don't care to do that. They're very stuck into their meta delusions, and it's a lack of recognition of their conscious thoughts, and they're very happy into the material, objective phenomenology experience of the self. Yes?
Sounds good.
All right. So that should be all for today, for tonight. Thank you for everybody's feedback, and we've taken some questions. We're going to address this question later on in the next podcast. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and good night. Authenticity, authentic living. What does it mean to be authentic and to live authentically? Well, authentic living requires you to embrace the reality of your freedom and to be responsible for how you choose to live. In psychology, authenticity is more than merely trying to be yourself. It requires you to know and to own who you are. Yeah? To know and to own who you are. Yet, how we balance authenticity and well-being throughout our lives and among the multiple roles we play usually brings many, many challenges. And it's supposed to It's supposed to, because otherwise life would be very boring. And what kind of authenticity would we have with all that boredom? Not a lot. So, what is living an authentic life? Now, how we perceive our authenticity is a crucial aspect of who we are. Perception, keyword perception. Not only does it significantly influence the pleasure we derive from our experiences, pleasure, happiness, joy, but it also affects our judgment and behavior across all aspects of our life. Judgment meaning as how we criticize, because we criticize a lot, don't we? Interesting enough, if we pay attention to, we see that young children are highly aware of the importance of authenticity. You might remember when you were a kid and how important it was to you to be authentic. And learning to treasure originals more than copies. Children, they learn to treasure original more than copies at a very early age. And later in life, authenticity became greatly affected by our skewed sense of value, of higher value, given by the expensive objects like expensive designer watches or specialty coffees or all kinds of designer stuff. That's a skewed sense of value. Now, learning to live authentically is about understanding what it means to be real. So, what does it mean to be real to you? Now, because for a lot of people that have grown up in traditional type of a society, a lot of Eastern European countries. I'm going to stick with Eastern European because I am Eastern European, but there are many more societies and countries that define themselves by their traditions. And a lot of my friends and colleagues define their authenticity by the traditions. But is that all there is to authenticity? I think there is more to authenticity. Now, learning to live authentically is about understanding what it means to be real. And traditions are past and they're old. They're valuable as tradition, but how big of an impact does it have over your authenticity? That's for you to determine. Because authenticity requires us to be natural, realizing our needs while at the same time considering others' needs, and this is not very easy. And for a lot of people, tradition plays a significant role in authenticity, and for some people, tradition does not play a significant role in their authenticity, and that is all right, right? But how and why do we stop being ourselves and being authentic? Is it all about traditions that we are stuck into perceiving that traditions, it's all there is to authenticity? Or is there more? Where Carl Rogers, most renowned humanistic psychologist, believe that being motivated toward fulfillment and self-actualization is a normal and natural human urge, yet it can be blocked when our needs go unsatisfied. And oftentimes this authenticity can also be not necessarily blocked, but unnecessarily What's the best word to use? Not finding the best word to use as to all of the tradition, hundreds and hundreds of years of tradition that need to be plugged into your authentic self. If that's important to you, it will be plugged. If it's not important to you, it won't be plugged. You will not be less authentic if you don't wear traditional clothes, that folkloric clothes that okay, I'm not gonna go the route. I'm not gonna go the route. Needless to say, people will do all they must do to survive, and this affects behavior and how we perceive the world and the people around us. And the people who have their needs met through positive, nurturing environments, they tend to flourish. Their authenticity will flourish. Because humans have a natural tendency to strive to become more authentic, developing in the direction necessary to reach their full potential. Just like plants that grow towards the sun. They're beautiful. So we as people should always tend to aspire to grow towards the light. What is the light? What is your light? So, babies, you see, when it comes to authenticities, we don't teach babies to be authentic. Uh-uh. Have you tried teaching a baby to be authentic? Doesn't work, does it? Babies are just simply are authentic. Children just simply are authentic. But they don't judge. So it's easier for them to be authentic because they don't judge, but there are so many more components into their authenticity other than lack of judgment. But babies and children, they don't fake anything that goes inside them. They are completely in touch with who they are inside. Whether good or bad, they're in touch with what's going on inside. When they're hungry, they cry. When their needs are met, they stop crying. Yet, as self-awareness develops, so does the sense of who they are, and then the narrative starts to develop. Yeah. They have a more expanded sense of who they are. So who are you? Now, the authentic parent ensures that the child needs are met. The developing child is free to choose their path, experiences a sense of belonging, and develop and realize their potential. If all the paths are clear and no difficulties within those paths, right? But in reality, love is often conditional. As children, we are shown more love and affection when we perform well, whether we get good grades or we win the race and we behave well, whatever the definition of well behavior is in the family we grew up with. And we learn that there are things that we must do to feel an increased sense of belonging and love. We learn that in our childhood. Everybody does that. And for a lot of people, this particular aspect can push them towards an inauthentic living. But Joseph reminds us that it's not true that for much of our adult life we put on a show. A lot of us put on a show, a lot of us don't put on a show, a lot of us strive to live an authentic life, to become our authentic selves. But there are a considerable amount of people that during the day they experience only temporary moments where they feel as though they are truly themselves, saying and thinking exactly how they feel. No, we can't. We are stressed, so we can't say We cannot say exactly what we think and how we feel during the lot of stress because we don't think good thoughts. So saying everything we think and feel when we are under a lot of stress, we're just going to end up hurting other people, and that doesn't mean we're going to be authentic. So let's just tame that wild anger, frustration caused by stress and overwhelm. Other than that, a person living authentically exists moment by moment. Now, moment by moment doesn't mean that they are not responsible. They are responsible, all right, and they're aware of the consequences of their choices, but they still have arrived to a consciousness of being in the moment, experience life moment by moment, savoring each moment, striving to understand themselves, their motivation, their defenses, and the conditions of worth, while also being aware of their responsibilities and choices. Because truth of the matter is that responsibilities comes before rights. We're not babies anymore, right? So we have responsibilities. An authentic life involves following your passion and being intimately connected to your natural abilities, strengths, and talents. So what are your strengths? What are your talents? What are your abilities? Do you know them or do you know some of them? Now, authenticity and authentic self in psychology research looked at life being impermanent and the uncertainty that of life impermanence may actually increase the authentic living because for many people the realization that death is ultimately unavoidable, then that values are subjective and the universe holds no clear objectives can actually be the wake-up call that leads people to live more authentic lives. And researchers, psychologists, a researcher explored the nature of authenticity and self-presentation, and surprisingly, they found that authentic people see colors more intensely. The colors are more vivid. And also, another few aspects that psychology research found is that authenticity may have personal values and add meaning to our lives, and we may also wish to be seen as authentic to gain social benefit. Well, all right, if that's your goal, then that's your goal. Hopefully you want to be authentic for no other gain than being authentic. And gaining really comes with that, not being authentic for the purpose of gaining something. Because you're going to gain lots when you become your authentic self. Now, self-esteem occurs when our true self, our motives, our values, our feelings, and self-perception operate congruently in our everyday life. And authenticity, or even being perceived as authentic, may provide positive benefits to our view of self-worth and view of our abilities, and also over increasing the amount of self-respect. So, according to positive psychology, good life it's not defined solely by the absence of psychological problems, but by experiences that go above and beyond the absence of the problems. We all have problems. If there would be no problems, life would be very, very boring, and I don't know how much authenticity would be there in between boredom. And it is boredom that causes a lot of violence in life. So we don't want to be bored. Absolutely not. Not overwhelmed, but not bored. And when it comes to authenticity, it's most likely when we are free and ready to flourish that we are authentic. So a considerable sense of freedom, not in a sense that you're free to do whatever you want, because you're not free to do whatever you want. There are rules and laws, and you got to be a law-abiding citizen, yeah? Because authenticity and living a complete and fulfilling life are processes rather than outcomes. Like success is a destination, yeah? It's a journey. Success is a journey, not a destination. Authenticity, it's also a journey, not a destination, a fully rewarding journey indeed. And living authentically involves moving in a direction that is most authentic to you as individual, and fully developing your potential, experiencing meaning in life and a deep enjoyment or happiness, including seeking authenticity, seeking excellence, and personal growth. And a person who, well, the way you will know you are more authentic than not, or at least moving toward reaching your authenticity, is that you will find yourself expressing gratitude, being mindful, engaging in challenging activities, expressing your essential self to provide meaning and purpose to your life. Now, renowned humanist psychologist Joseph suggests that asking yourself the following questions will help you tremendously in figuring out, are you authentic yet, or are you on your way to become authentic? Do you feel free to make your own choices? Well, I hope that you do. I hope that you're not a child and that you do feel free to make your own choices, right? And do you feel free to express your own views and opinions? Well, respectfully and in a positive way, do you feel free to express your own views and opinions? And this doesn't mean do you feel free to express all the criticism you feel you want to criticize everything up and down, left and right. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you feel free to criticize some, but is that all you do? Criticize? Well, no, that's not being authentic. Unless you want to be an authentic criticizer, right? And then do you feel you can be yourself on a day-to-day basis? It's important. So do you feel like you can be yourself on a day-to-day basis? And if your answer to this is no, then I want you to reflect on one other question. Could it be that you are not being true to who you are? Now, this is a loaded question, and I'd like to caution my European comrades and their ethnicity, and anybody that has an origin that has their identity attached to an ethnicity. There's much more to tradition and ethnicity when it comes to authenticity, and authenticity doesn't mean you have to continue to, well, some traditions are good because they're healthy, but if some of the traditions that they don't, you're not in agreement with anymore, you don't have to hold them up if they're not true for you. Whatever tradition that is, some religious tradition, some other, what they're usually related, a lot of traditions that are usually related to religious ceremonies, or some sort of cyclical ceremonies, or giving birth, or birthdays, or baptism, or weddings, or things like that. So if some of those traditions agree with you, by all means go have fun with it. If some of them do not agree with who you are today, you don't have to squeeze that into who you are. Why? Because you don't have to. You're not disrespecting any of that. It's just you don't find as much value in them as you used to find at some point some time ago, right? So, how to be your authentic self? There's lots of practices that you can engage in, several practices and activities to be more authentic, while you encourage a balance between what's going on inside and what you express outside, from in to out, right? But in the long term, putting on an inauthentic front just because you have to stick with some tradition, well, you have to respect the rules and the laws, and you have to be a law-abiding citizen, and you have to be respectful. That's a given. We're not talking about that. Being authentic doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want and break whatever you want and walk over people. No, no, no. But in the long term, putting on an inauthentic front, just for example, I'm picking on tradition. Well, because a lot of people when it comes to tradition, a lot of people, I have been scolded, and other people have been scolded by being inauthentic because they don't follow all the traditions. Well, thank you very much. Can I adjust to some of the traditions? For me, for example, I'm not going to follow all of the traditions when it comes to eating. No way. Why? Well, I have lots of food allergies. So thank you very much. I'll respect all of the traditions, but I don't have to eat that food, right? So, and whichever way this is going to apply for you, then that's how it's going to apply for you. Because putting on an inauthentic front is tiring, and ultimately it's damaging to your mental and physical well-being. Because in the end, you keep up with the Joneses. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You have to keep up with yourself, being who you are, your authentic self, nourishing yourself, and being of service to others. Because in the end, the way you are your authentic self, you are becoming more aware of what's happening in your body. You are listening to your inner voice, to that respectful, nourishing, nurturing inner voice, not to the inner critic, because that's too much criticism, right? So listen to the inner voice, to your values, inner strengths, to all of the positive aspect to your inner voice. Don't put yourself down. No. We can increase your self-worth, self-esteem. And also know yourself. Know yourself, be yourself, and own yourself. So if there is a formula on how to be authentic self, this is the formula. Know yourself, own yourself, be yourself, and you will be your authentic self. That's easier said than done, right? I know, because becoming more aware of what's happening in your body and know yourself, it might be easier, but owning yourself, a lot of people have difficulties owning themselves. What does it mean to own yourself? Well, a lot of us, and way too many people, if you ask me, there's a lot of external expectations that we go about fulfilling. There is a need to go fulfill all of this external expectation. And here are where traditions come in, because traditions, well, here's society, families, other people, mother, father, teacher, minister, that tell you who you should be and what you should value. And a lot of this is important, and you want to listen to it, and because it's valuable to you. You're not going to reject all of it because a lot of it is healthy. But when you get to the point where you know that part of it is not healthy and is not for you, then you move on. And you go about getting to know you more, getting to own you a little more, and it takes a little bit of personal growth, takes a little bit of coaching, a little bit of experiences, positive experiences that are going to positively affect your neurotransmitters in your amygdala, and that consolidation of the stored memory that is going to repattern a lot of the patterns that no longer serve you. And because by now, all of us have spent plenty of time trying to please other people, pleasing external expectations. We still have to do that at work. We go to work, we have a job, we get paid, we have to please those external expectations, but that is at work. At work, you have your work identity. You don't have to identify yourself, your authentic self. You don't have to identify that with your job title. Well, if you want, and it's all congruent with who you are, who you want to be, by all means, yeah, good. But you don't have to. Your job title is not who you are. It could be, but it's not. And knowing what your true authentic self looks like is going to take some time, because even in the process of learning who you are, how to develop the best, well, reevaluate your values, identify your strengths, having some transformational experiences, uplifting transformational experiences, it takes a little bit of time. But in the process of reaching your authenticity, it requires you to have a good understanding of your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. And what you think and feel, it's also part of the behavior. So thoughts, emotions, feelings, behaviors. And if you struggle with this self-awareness, you definitely want to get in touch with a trained coach. If you don't want to get in touch with me as a trained coach, by all means, find a trained coach that is suitable for you, that you find you are going to have a good relationship with, that you find that you are going to be allowed to be your true self, a coach that's going to hear you as you are, not to hear you as you need to be. Right? So personal growth into becoming your authentic self, it's one of the most rewarding journeys in your life. It is definitely one of the most rewarding journeys. And I've talked about this before, but the realities, internal individual reality, it's different from person to person. Everybody has their own individual map of reality, and no two people are alike, and that's a good point, that no two people are alike, because if we all would be alike again, it would be a lot of boredom, and boredom is not healthy, not at all. A lot of people resort to violence because there is boredom, right? But individual reality takes a little bit of time and a little bit of coaching to study your beliefs, to study your values, understand your habits, your routines, your memories, your expectations, your attitudes. Oh my goodness gracious, your attitudes. We all have attitudes. And understand our meta programs, the filters, how we generalize, store, delete. There is so much that goes inside a individual reality. So with creating is, I am not rebuilding, but I am redoing this authentic self master class. I've been teaching this authentic self for many years, 15 years at least. So I am revamping this authentic self master class, and I am adding some elements to it to make it a bit more, to add value for your sense of accountability. Because there's a lot of neurocoaching involved in the authentic self that I teach. And my neurocoaching involves Feelfulness, which is my own proprietary thought feeling practices I call Feelfulness, where I teach you to feel a feeling by choice. And then I'm adding positive psychology exercises that, so when I combined the neurocoaching with Feelfulness and with positive psychology exercises, all of these three concepts are used to help you with your personal development and understanding of yourself from 360 degrees. Yeah. We don't just look at what's wrong, because looking at what's wrong, I mean, you kind of know what you don't like by this point in life. You kind of know what's wrong, not necessarily what's wrong, but things you would like to adjust. And clinical psychology, that's what it does. Psychiatry and clinical psychology, they look at what's wrong and they try to fix it. Coaching doesn't do that. With neurocoaching and positive psychology, we look at your strengths. What are your strengths, what are your values, and we build upon that. So if we work on what your strengths are, we're going to strengthen your strengths. And by strengthening your strengths, all of the weaknesses will fall away, because we're going to focus on your strengths and have them enhanced. And authentic self refers to being true to who you really are and understanding the core of your being. And on my website, this is how the page on my website looks like. When you're gonna go over here to my website, this is how my website is going to look like. And of course, you are always free to reach out to me with all kinds of questions you have relating to this authentic self and what is involved in feelfulness, neurocoaching, and positive psychology. Because the rate of success my students have through this authentic self is, you cannot compare. There's no comparing. It's just, that isn't. It's just, this is a complete transformational personal growth. You transform into that which you wish to be. Now, it doesn't mean that all of your molecules are going to disappear. You're not going to have your own molecules, because it doesn't happen like that. You want to keep some of your molecules and many of your molecules, right? But neurocoaching is a technique that's used to understand the neurological processes behind your behavior. I have lots of free therapy in here. Neurological processes behind your behavior, your beliefs, and your thoughts, which gives you valuable insight into how your brain works and why you think, feel, and act the way you do. So once you have this kind of insight, light bulbs begin to turn on and a lot of ahas begin to happen. And you want to have as many ahas as possible. Now, feelfulness comes with highly developed abilities and skills that enable you to gain the capacity to feel a feeling by choice, by which you're going to have the ability to generate a state of being. So, who do you want to be? Who are you, and who do you want to be? And positive psychology look at your strengths, your values, your motivation, your goals, and so much more, communication styles, and many more life domains, to help you focus on the things that make you happy and content, and to propel you to become your true authentic self. So by combining all of this and with very deep spiritual, transformative spiritual experiences, it is impossible not to arrive to your true authentic self. And in this journey at arriving your true authentic self, the stress begins to fall away. Your perception is going to change. It's impossible for your perception not to change. And when it's as if a bunch of draperies and a bunch of veils begins to go away, and you begin to see things clearly, with more vivid colors. Authentic self people, they see colors more vividly, but through that, through my authentic self masterclass, you get a wholesome approach to understanding a mindset, your feelings, your emotions, and how to use all of that to become more authentic, and not just think of what your authentic self could look like, but actually become that, being that, experiencing yourself as your authentic self. So this is a big deal. This is not just theory. From books you can learn so many things from books, but experiences, personal growth and transformation and authenticity can only happen through experiences. So reading a bunch of books about your authenticity, they're going to be fun and they're going to enlighten you with some good ideas. And about a couple of weeks after you've read the books, you kind of forget all about it and nothing will be put in practice, right? So if you want to become your authentic self, to expand yourself to levels you never knew existed, that but which are possible, easily available to you, that has to happen through experience. So through creating ease. Right here, this is what it looks like on my website, like that. And again, please reach out to me with questions you might have about this journey. This is a wonderful, wonderful journey. Maybe one of the most important and most wonderful journeys you'll ever have in your life. This personal growth journey towards your authentic self. I've taken this journey myself, and I would not have it any other way. No way, no way. And in this journey, you get to embrace your unique qualities, and develop a clear vision of your personal and professional life. And you can inspire positive changes and growth in yourself and in those around you. Because when values, strengths, and actions align, when your values, your strength, and your actions align, you feel happier, you feel more resilient, and you experience an increased subjective well-being. Now, who doesn't want well-being? We all want well-being, right? And in addition to that, harmony between professional and personal values will enhance. The congruency will begin to develop, something that's called a flow, a smooth flow. And your values will enhance your motivation and the passion, because you believe that you are making a difference. And indeed, you will be able to make a significant difference, not only in your life, but the difference that you make in your life, you will be able to take that and apply in the life of those around you. Yeah. So if I'm going to leave you with anything today, I want to leave you with this formula. Know yourself, own yourself, be yourself, to be your authentic self. And make sure to let me know your questions. All right, and you have the website right here to go on the website and sign up and check up a little bit more about what the course is about. But there is so much that's available on this course that it's impossible to note every single. Well, if a lot of the deep or spiritual experiences, it's necessary for them to come as a surprise, because they're going to be more impactful. And if they're going to be divulged ahead of time, if somebody is going to teach you something with a similar terminology, you might expect something that is different than what I offer, and then the impact is not going to be as significant. So therefore, this is a very important reason by which I'm not listing everything that we do in every class, because a lot of it is also customized to your unique needs, to your unique values, to your unique aspirations. So it depends on who you are and what you want to be. It depends on what you need to heal, what you need to cleanse, what you need to resolve in your life. And yeah, a lot of it is customized to who you are. This is not the kind of course you take and you just you're left all on your own. No, this is a one-on-one coaching, and there's several different layers, several different levels of financial commitment depending on your budget, and I will make it work as long as you are committed, and you want to do this and you're committed. We will make it work depending on your budget and your commitment. Why? Because this is the most wonderful, wonderful journey you will ever take in your life. All right? So, your authentic self is made of know yourself, own yourself, be yourself, to be your authentic self. I've been getting a lot of good questions about authenticity, and that is a very, very interesting topic. So make sure you type your questions in the comments so we can address those questions. Authenticity is a concept that has been approached and interpreted and talked about and debated in various ways with different scholars, different philosophers, different psychologists, different cultures. And some of the very good interpretations, some of the very good perspective that are easier to understand in today's world would be existential authenticity, social authenticity, relational authenticity, moral authenticity, and self-actualization authenticity. So we have, for this evening, about 5 different types of authenticity. They're all authentic. They just refer to different aspects in different life domains, right? And what I'm finding interesting, since I'm bilingual and I'm Romanian, the first encounter, the primary encounter on authenticity when I'm with Romanians, has to do with social authenticity, with national identity, social authenticity. To them, for me, authenticity, it's more of a self-actualization authenticity. But also for the Romanian community, it's important to keep the Romanian values, Romanian culture alive as being authentic. So when we talk about the authenticity, and I bring my angle of self-actualization authenticity, and other people bring their angle as ethnic authenticity or cultural authenticity, or moral authenticity, or whatever other authenticity, of course there's going to be a bit of disconnect, which is okay, because then we have things to talk about. So authentic, I've been talking about the authentic self last time. And becoming your authentic self, it is an extremely important process, and it's part of you elevating your emotional intelligence. And it's quite a pleasant journey, if you ask me. Entail is definitely attention allocation. And I want to touch up that attention, focus, observation, concentration are 4 different things, and they have been greatly misconstrued, which leads to a lack of proper understanding and insufficient application, right? So today, in today's world, we are presented with an unparalleled access to information which challenges our task to efficiently manage time and resources. Not only that, but to allocate attention resources, right? And this entails awareness, focus, observation, concentration. Now, attention is a built-in mechanism. It's going to be there whether you like it or not, right? But allocating attention, it's a different thing of its own. And we're going to start with awareness. So I'm going to go to right here. The 5 important steps in developing the skills are awareness, thought, attention, choice, and action, in that order, and then repeat. These are the essential steps. Why? Because you're going to develop some unparalleled skills that are so needed in today's world. What is awareness? There are all kinds of types of awareness. We have ordinary awareness, vigilant awareness, intense concentration, daydreaming, hypnosis, unconsciousness, and death. So if we're looking at this, we're not dead and we're not unconscious. So let's try the total absorption type of awareness, because this is going to bring you results. And attention needs a fundamental cognitive behavioral process. It's a built-in mechanism. And what do I mean by that? If you are to put your hand on a hot plate, you're gonna remove it right away. That's the attention that's built in, the mechanism that's built in the attention. You don't have to think and consciously process the fact that you're gonna remove your hand from touching a hot plate. That's the attention building. Now, attention allocation, it's a different story. In within attention, we have several layers, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I don't want to keep you bored. Yeah, I don't want you to be bored. So we have focused attention, sustained attention, selective, alternating, divided, and simultaneous. Now, simultaneous attention involves observing multiple events at the same time. Not processing, just observing multiple events at the same time, like 180 degrees, right? Being aware of it, a relaxed type of awareness. Focusing is different than concentration. And focusing involves holding an open attention, non-judgmental focusing, allocating attention resource, focusing, open attention, non-judgmental attention, which is directly experienced but is not found in words. Directly experienced but not found in words. And it has a lot to do with simultaneous attention. Simultaneous attention involves observation and focus, like both of them together, right? Now, concentration, on the other hand, requires you to direct your stream of thoughts to where the attention is needed in a moment. So, attention allocation. So, we are built with an enormous amount of resources right here in the physical body and in our head, right? The brain, it's a sophisticated mechanism. So once we follow this steps, awareness, thought, attention, choice, and action, that means that you become aware of something, you have a thought about what you became aware, you're going to place attention on your thought, now no more automatic habits, then you're going to make a choice whether to think the thought, whether to speak the words, whether to engage in action, and then you're going to act. Finish the thought. That's a skill. Say the word or perceive with action and continue to be aware and so on. Now, every type of intelligence needs these sharp observational skills. every single type of intelligence. What the main skill that is involved in the